Forgot I got to do that sometime. Thanks for joining me this morning. This morning I want to start off our conversation talking about customers versus clients. I have been getting a lot of questions, whether you're trying to act in a transactional role or you're dealing with a FSBO or you're dealing with an unrepresented buyer, right? How do you deal with customers versus clients, right? So first thing, whenever you have somebody that's a customer, that's a buyer, the buyer's a customer, they should be filling out a customer agreement. And that just kind of goes through and informs the buyer of the duties that you owe them, right? An unrepresented seller would be a right to show unlisted property. That is what's going to guarantee any commission that is paid by the seller to you with the right to show unlisted property, okay? Kind of got that. Transactional brokers, you kind of have both of them, and the commission can be paid 100 different ways. The point to all of this is when things happen and what creates a binding contract, right? So binding contracts are when the last party signs the contract, so it is executed by all parties, and that contract is delivered to the other side, right? We all get that? So if you send it a signed contract over at 11 p.m. to the other side, the agent says, oh, the binding agreement date is tomorrow because I didn't receive it until tomorrow. I didn't see it until tomorrow. That is not true. The binding agreement date is actually the day before when we're talking about that, right? When you're dealing with a customer, that agent cannot receive notice on behalf of a customer. So you need to notify the seller or buyer, the customer, whoever is unrepresented, directly. That is what constitutes notification, right? So for instance, you're working, and I'm just going to keep this all one-sided, right? We're the listing side, and we have an agent that has a buyer that is a customer. Okay? Fair? That's a fair, reasonable thing. Happens plenty of the time, right? Buyer is a customer. So they get that offer, they send it over to you, right? Seller's like, hey, this is a great offer. They just sign it, and you send it back to the agent. Is it bound yet? No. Because the customer has to receive the notice, right? So when that happens, you have to send it to the agent. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to send it to the agent, but you have to send it to the buyer. Make sense? No? Yes? No? Kind of? Kind of makes sense? All right, so you'll see it. They'll be checked here as working with the buyer as a customer when you see it, right, on the purchase and sale agreement. Whenever you see that, if an agent submits an offer to you on the list side or you're submitting an offer, right, I'll come down here to the signature page. Remember, this agent cannot accept notice on behalf of the customer. The customer has to have their contact information in here to receive notice. If you don't have it in there, the entire contract can be deemed voidable, right? So if you're working with a buyer as a customer, you definitely want to have it in there, right? So you're going back and forth in the binding agreement date. Anything and everything that happens, you need to notify this customer buyer, not the agent, in order for notice to be sent, right? That agent could forward something onto you, and it would constitute you receiving notice because we represent the seller as a client, right? So there's lots of confusion with that. Whenever one party is a customer, all of this, address, phone number, email address, should be filled in for that customer. Clean, easy, simple, right? Keep an eye on that as you're working with customers, or if you have listings and you get a customer buyer where they're marked as a customer on page 1. That is notifying you that you must send all notices directly to the consumer. Good deal?
At the bottom, we don't fill anything out on their side, but I've seen people, often they'll put non-FMLS. Is there ever a place you put that?
You could type it into the buyer brokerage firm non-FMLS, no agent, or leave it blank. Either way, all of those will work just to say that there is no agent. But I'm talking about when there is an agent, all the agent's information is filled in here, right? Flip it around real quick. We represent the buyer and the seller, right? The seller is a FSBO, or not a FSBO, but It's a transactional broker. You guys have seen it, the cheapy places where it's, you know, get your home in the MLS and all communication goes directly to the seller. You've all seen those, right? The seller's information needs to be on the contract itself in order to send notice. So we're representing the buyer as a client. The seller has an agent, but they're just a customer of that agent, right? You come up on due diligence end. Due diligence, it's 11 o'clock at night. You send your termination to the agent. You didn't terminate that contract properly, right? You need to notify the customer. Good deal. So whether or not there's anything filled in here, if there is no agent, obviously you need all of the contact information for the seller or buyer, right?
Let's say if it's an easy sell and they say, will you represent, draw up our contracts and represent?
If
Well,
it's-
you can't represent them, but as a customer, do you still put your information on both sides then?
Yes, if it's a customer agreement, you would put that. But on the customer side, you still put all of their contact information in the contract. That is where notice goes to, right? So similar to notice, I'm kind of on that subject right now. So you see my email address, right? I have a bunch of email addresses. You all have seen that, right? If I'm on the listing side and that's the email address in the contract, but I've sent you an email address from my Gmail account, right? And you send termination on the buy side during due diligence to my Gmail account, that doesn't constitute proper notice because this is where the notice is supposed to go to. So you'll see agents, we've had this happen with the help desk. We start sending emails and we take the email addresses from the contract, right? The agent will email back, can you change it to this email address for me? No, because that's not what's on the contract. That should be your answer every time. Because now if you send a termination or send notice or something to that other one, you didn't properly notify them per the rules, right? Good on all that? Make sense? Excellent. All right.